Welcome everybody to the Single and Stilettos Show. I'm Suzanne Oshima and I'm a matchmaker and dating coach at Dream Bachelor and Bachelorette, and I'm also the founder of Single and Stilettos. Today we have on our show Robyn Hatcher, and she's a communications expert, and she's also an author at speakeTC.com. And I'm so excited to have her here today because she's going to give you some great body language tips on how to help you shine on a date. Welcome, Robyn, to the show.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's great being here. I love it.
I know. This is going to be so great because you're going to really give us some secret tips on body language. But before you do, I would love for you to tell our audience how you became a communications expert.
Oh, wow. It started way back at birth, actually. I became a communications expert when I was about 2 years old, and I refused to speak. I didn't refuse to speak. I didn't speak. So it's a very interesting trajectory. I didn't start speaking until I was 2 and a half, and then when I did start to speak, I babbled, so I wasn't clear, and the only person who could understand me was my mother. And so that, of course, was inhibiting, and I became really, really shy as a result. And shy became my nickname for years and years and years. People called me shy. They referred to me as shy. And the reason why I say it began back there is because as a shy child, there were no expectations of me. No one expected me to speak. So I got to observe so much body language, so much behavior, so much communication. And I got to see from that little ant on the wall, the fly on the wall perspective, what was working for people, what was not working for people. And then as I developed and I wanted to get out of my shyness, I decided to become an actor. And I've had 30 years professional acting experience. And from there, I started writing experience, and then I started teaching English as a second language. And what I discovered in doing that was that so many of my students, they were adult learners, they were bright, they were smart, they were learning how to talk English, and they weren't learning how to communicate. And I was passionate about getting them to communicate. So I started I started a public speaking class. I started really researching it in earnest back then. And then I developed my own company dealing with native speakers.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a great story. I love that story that you started out so shy and that it brought you to here today. I think that's amazing. Well, great. So let's jump into it. So I know you talk about how first impressions can really make or break you, and especially on a first date. So why is a man's first impression of you so important on a date?
Well, we have to realize as women that our first impression of men are so important too. It takes less than 2 seconds to make a first impression. And the first impression is made out of purely visible means of support, just what they see. And it's so important because people get to know whether they trust you and whether they feel safe with you. And that's what the whole thing about first impressions are. It's not that, oh, he's so cute, or he's not my type, and all. It's partly that sometimes, but what it really is it's our inner brain, our old animalistic brain, that is trying to assess whether that person is going to be safe, or is he going to be prey. And that's one of the things that we're assessing. And the most important thing, one of the statistics I learned along the way, is it can take up to 12 visits to undo a negative first impression. So that's like an amazing statistic. And on a first date, I doubt if people are going to be saying, okay, date 11, I might like her. It's like you don't have
Right. So that's amazing. So what are your 3 best body language tips that you can give a woman on a first date?
Yeah. First I want to qualify with body language. There are so many people that teach a lot of body language, and the bottom line is you can't read people based on 1 or 2 things. You really need to take into consideration at least 3 cues before you can make any kind of an assessment about what they're thinking.
Okay.
Now, and the other thing that I want to point out is that the book that I wrote is called Standing Ovation Presentations. And what it does is it talks about 9 different actor types and how you can be individual, your unique style, your unique communication style. So I start off saying that because the 3 most important body language tips can really depend on what your natural, unique communication style is. So in general, if you really like within those 2 seconds, you realize, okay, I like this person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the things that you want to do is you want to have your torso be uncovered, not covered, not naked.
Not naked. Don't take off your clothes. Keep your clothes on a date.
You do. So you want your torso to be unobstructed, because that shows an openness and a vulnerability that really lets people in. And it's not like you're closing up, and it's not. So this closing up, when you cross your arms, or some women do this and they hold one arm here, it's a way of really closing off a part of who they are, a part of their accessibility. So It looks like you're hiding something. And the other part is your neck is a very also vulnerable part of your body. I always would advise women to wear something that shows their neck, because that's going to show vulnerability. Another tip for men is, if you really like this guy, is exposing the neck even more, like pulling the chin up and exposing the neck more, is also showing a lot of vulnerability, and it creates in the man a desire to protect you.
Really?
So it's really one of those things that, it really can be attractive. And I think one of the third tips that I would give is to just a light touch. Touch is really important. It's not a heavy touch. Sometimes even upon meeting them, if the first time you meet them and you like them, one of the things that you could do is just touch them on the elbow. That's a very subtle touch, and some of the research has proven that really makes the person bond with you. It makes them feel some sort of a unique attraction to you, and dependent and trusting. So it's really a great technique.
Interesting. So you said the elbow. And now why the elbow over like maybe the forearm or maybe a shoulder?
Yeah, on a date or first date or something, some of those other areas could be a little bit too personal or too in your face or too much on a first date. The elbow is one of those places that, it's sort of safe. It's a safe. And again, depending on your type, if you're a very effervescent person and you touch the elbow, that's fine, and you're strong enough to do it. But again, if you touch the shoulder or some other part and you're that kind of a person, that's great. Now, if you're really shy and you're afraid that person might become too much into your personal space, then the elbow is going to be a safer, like, I like you, but I'm not like on top of you.
That's a really good tip. I love that tip. And so I guess it really just depends on the woman and where she feels the most safest in touching a guy. That's great. Yeah. Now, I've heard a woman's voice can actually attract a man. Is that true?
I know that they can detract, but an interesting thing that I learned about a woman's voice and men and women's voice, men can pick up only 2 to 3 tones of voice, whereas women could pick up up to 5 or 6 tones.
Really?
So there's like really 3 tones that a man is going to respond to. So what you do want is that sultry voice is attractive for a reason. And I believe that the reason that it's more attractive is because the opposites are going to make the man think of things that are not as pleasant. So when you have a higher pitched voice, and I just learned this recently, a higher pitched voice, some women's high pitches are very reminiscent of the cry of a baby, like a distress cry of a baby. Now, when you think of a distress cry of a baby, that's not going to make a man want to spend the rest of their life with you or spend the rest of the night with you.
Right.
So the thing that you can really do is to lower the pitch of the voice to that sort of a soft, inviting type of a bedroom voice, which I just instinctively just did, and drop it down into the diaphragm. And that's not only is that can be a great power voice for people who don't have it, but it's also a very soft and endearing voice. Now, there's a lot of talk with that Lake Bell movie coming out about the sexy baby voice, and a lot of women do that. I'm not a man. I haven't. I would love to talk to them and find out whether they find it attractive or not. I
think it depends on the man.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm like you. I think it's the most annoying thing to hear.
Exactly.
Now, what if a woman naturally has a high-pitched voice and it's very difficult for her to lower her voice? Would you actually suggest that she take voice lessons or something like that?
I actually created a vocal workout CD that is primarily designed to help people change the tenor and the tone of their voice. It's a CD. It has 12 exercises on it. You can get it on my website. You can download it in MP4 form. And what it is like all the exercises that I had to learn as an actor, because not only was I shy, but when I showed up to my 4-year degree program to study acting, I had a higher pitched voice. And when you're going on stage, when you're doing Shakespeare, when you're doing all of these classics, that doesn't work in the theater. Right. So what we had to do, and as a group, like my program, we had these voice and diction classes, 8 a.m., 3 to 4 days a week for 4 years of our lives. And part of it was in learning how to breathe and learning how to use the diaphragm differently so that we can lower the pitch of our voice and to have more flexibility in our tone.
That's so interesting. And I'm going to guess, tell me if I'm right or wrong, that a lower pitched voice actually exudes more confidence. Is that true?
Sure. Yeah, that's the only reason why I do it. I mean, it's like, yeah, you do want to be yourself, but unfortunately, it does engender more confidence. And again, just like the visual, you want to say, it's like, well, that's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's a man's world. It's not necessarily because it's a man's world. It's because it's an animal world. And when you think of the sound of distress, that is the higher pitched sound. So in place, you don't want to be seen as being in distress all the time. And also a sign of weakness. If you've got an animal who's hurt, the sound that they make when they're hurt is a higher pitched sound.
That's
the
true.
Sound that the lion makes or the elephant makes. I mean, you've got these strong, lower pitched sounds that say, get out of my way, I have power.
Right.
That's where it comes from.
That's interesting. And I always tell both men and women that both sexes find confidence to be so sexy. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's one of those things that you definitely want to exude on a first date.
Right. And so many women fall into the trap. It's like, I want to be vulnerable. I want to be this. I want to look like somebody to date. But you're right. I believe, especially in this day and age, men are attracted to confidence a lot more than they're attracted to this sweetness. And you can have both sides. You can have a nice balance.
Exactly. That's the key, is balance. I think a lot of women forget that because you don't want to be overly confident where you take control of everything.
Both ways. Yeah, I have a friend who is a intuitive, and she does dating relationship coach. And what she says that she finds in most of the people who come to her is that a lot of women are so now tied into their masculine energy that they've left out some of the feminine energy, which is, again, not attractive to men.
Right, exactly. So remember, ladies, balance.
Yes.
So now, can you tell us some body language signs that a woman should watch out for to know that a man's actually interested in her on a first date?
Right. Yeah. You want to pick up on, first of all, eye contact. Most men have fewer receptacles for reading body language, so they're not also as good at giving. But they also don't know when they are giving it. So what you want to do is you want to notice that if they're leaning in towards you, that's going to be a great sign. Making direct eye contact with you is, of course, a no-brainer. And here's a little tiny tip. And if you can sneak a look at their feet. Now, it's very interesting. I have a video on YouTube and on my site. Feet tell you where a person wants to be. And on a date, if you go to any kind of event, you look around, you look at couples, when their feet are facing towards each other, you can tell they're really into each other. Right. Even just at a network in a conversation. If you look down and he's got his feet facing away from you, that's not a great sign. If his feet are facing towards you, if his body language is, if he's leaning in, if he indeed also does a touch thing, it's great. And now there are some little NLP tips that they can kind of give, but it's very tricky and it's very difficult to watch on a first date. But when the man's eyes, and I have to check because like the right and left, but if you're facing them,
Mm-hmm.
and they are looking down to their right,
Mm-hmm.
your right, their left, it means that they're accessing some emotional kinesthetic field. And so that's a really interesting thing, so that they're somehow involved emotionally. Now, consequently, it's like, and again, you want to look for an open body language. Now, again, when people are thinking, their eyes do different things. Some people, when they are thinking, and this is the norm, it's not like 100%, but when they're thinking and they're trying to remember something visually, their eyes are going to go up to the right, which is your left.
Okay.
So when somebody's looking up to the right,
Uh-huh.
they are actually kind of constructing a fact, you know. And then when they're looking towards the other way, they're remembering. So you want to look up for when people are looking this way. It's like if you ask them a question, "Are you married?" and you see the eyes travel up to the right, your left, they could be making up a story about whether or not, how to tell you that they're not married. So it's like those are little things that you want to look for.
Oh my God, that's interesting.
They're just emotionally remembering the fact, you know, they're thinking. So the little tips that you can find out more is like neuro-linguistic programming. I'm a geek for neurology. I really love all of this stuff. And the interesting thing about men, however, is that because they have such a difficulty in reading language, they're not as easy to read as well. But so those are kind of the things that you want to look for: open body language, leaning in, and another trick that I forgot to mention is nodding. Nodding is a really very important part of a conversation on a date, because when you nod in a certain, if somebody talks and you don't answer and you just nod, they're going to continue talking about 4 times more. You know, so one of the things that we do as women is we want to keep the conversation going, blah, 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 blah. And you ask a question and they might have a shorter answer. Right. Now, if they have a shorter answer, you can just smile and nod, and that might let them speak more. Now, the opposite is true, because sometimes you have these men that are totally chatty Cathy or so egotistical that they keep doing. Sometimes that's because we're nodders. You know, if the woman is nodding, that's encouraging them to continue to speak. So there are ways that, you know, if you find that they're talking, and you suddenly realize that you've been nodding, it's like you could stop and maybe they'll get the message.
Oh, that's funny. That's so interesting. Yeah. My God, those are some great tips. I want to ask you a question, though, because I work with a lot of male clients, too, when it comes to date coaching. And one of the things that a lot of my male clients tell me is that on a first date, or sometimes even on a second date, they can't tell if a woman is interested. Mm-hmm. And so what are some signs a woman could give a guy that she's interested, so that it's okay for him to, you know, maybe touch her on the arm or whatever?
Right. Now that goes into the other nature of what I do is like, because the verbal communication is still very important. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we forget to just find a way to say what it is that we want, or ask for what we want, or what we don't know. And so for women are going to be interested, people have heard it and seen it in movie. If you watch a movie and you watch this romantic scene, you'll notice that most of the actresses, when they're interested in the man, will start playing with their hair. Mm-hmm. That is a sure sign that someone is interested in you. And it happens instinctively, and that's one of the things that a man could look for if they're playing with their hair. Okay. Also, if they're playing with the neck and this area, that's another indication that they might be interested. There's a slight tilt to a woman's head when they're interested as well. It's like this tilt and tilt up, and that smile that says, you know, come to me. So those are little signs. And again, the men, of course, have to look at the feet, how the body position is is the body going towards them or away from them? So the woman may not touch you, but she's playing with her hair, has her knees and feet pointed towards you, and might be doing something like this. Those are signs that you can take as saying, yes, you're interested in it. And then it becomes one of those really taking the plunge and asking a question that is maybe not in your face, but really state something like acknowledge, I've had a really great time. I would love to find out. I'm wondering. And these are like tentative conversation languages that I like to use in any situation. It's like you tell your side of the story, and then you leave it open for the other person's side of the story. So it's one of the things. I've had a really great time. I'm wondering how you feel about us having a different date. So that is like that's your story. So you open it up for her story, and
right.
That's something or his story, and that's something that we just don't do a lot. We wait for signals, or we wait for this, or we wait for that, and sometimes it really is going to take somebody opening up the conversation.
I completely agree. And it's funny because I could hear all the women out there right now saying, oh my God, that's so scary. I could never say that on a first date. But here's the thing, and I think you'll agree with me, is somebody's got to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And if you keep putting your guard up, no one's going to get to know anybody. So you got to be vulnerable when it comes to dating.
You have to be vulnerable, and when you take it from the I language and want to really reach out to them, it's like you're just telling your truth. Going home and going over in your head, why didn't he pick this up? That's more painful to me, I think, than having somebody tell you something. Now, the point of the matter is now you have some of these body language tips. They could lie to your face, but you'll know.
Right, exactly. You'll pick up on the other cues.
Yeah, and if you put it out there and they'll say, oh yeah, that sounds great. With their eyes going all over the place. It's like, but you put it out there and so it's nothing. You put everything on the table. And
right.
And nowadays there's so many different levels of people. From what I hear, there are so many really aggressive women. There are still so many women who are old school or not aggressive. There are some really assertive, aggressive men, and there are some men that are scared to death of this whole dating thing.
Yeah.
And you don't know who's in front of you because we're all really good at lying and covering.
Right.
So, that's the other thing about, in my book is to really be able to assess the communication style that you're faced with, because then you get to see what are their strengths and weaknesses, what might be going on. Maybe they're saying this, but actually underneath they may be feeling something else.
Right. Good point. So, give us your best body language tip for women when it comes to dating.
Best body language tip. I think I gave them all away.
You did.
The smile. Smiling is so important. We forget how much smiling is important. And what happens is when we don't smile, the other person is not going to smile. It's such an open and warm thing. And that you don't have to be grinning from ear to ear, but to really start with a really nice, friendly smile. And, somebody is going to pick up on that and feel so much more comfortable. A lot of times, I think it sounds really corny, but people forget to do that.
Oh, I know. I completely agree with you. I hear that all the time, is that, if a woman doesn't smile, a guy thinks she's not interested.
Exactly.
So it is so small, but they need to do it.
Very small. We're so busy. And like in workday, you may not smile 24/7, but, before you go out of that house, practice the smile and remember to wear it.
It's true.
I think all appointments start before you leave the house. You really need to prepare for what it is.
Exactly. And it puts you in a better mood, too. A positive mind space. So I think that's really important. Well, these have been some great tips. So tell our audience how they can find you.
Yes, please come to my website at speaketc.com, speak, etc. And I have a quiz where you can find out what your actor type is, which is really fun. And then you can sign up for my newsletter where you'll get information. And I'm planning a seminar called a teleseminar called Speak You Masterclass, where you really find out what kind of style you are and how to optimize the strength of your style and how to minimize the weaknesses of your style. and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I do one-on-one coaching, I do Skype coaching, and just reach out and ask me some questions.
That's great. So everybody go to Robyn's site and check out how she works with her clients, because I think some of her tips are just so great, and I think that women can really use these tips when it comes to dating. So thanks everybody for joining us on the Single and Stiletto Show. Our show is available both in video format and podcast format. If you would like to view our videos, you can go to singleandstilettos.com. If you would like to get our podcasts, you can go to iTunes. And if you would like to get our free report on the top 10 secrets on what attracts a man and what turns him off, you can go to singleandstilettos.com, or you can click right here on the video.